Hello there, welcome back to the Star Wars What If reaction. Today, we're reacting to What If Captain Rex raised Luke and Leia Skywalker, created by Pente Patrol Star Wars. Be sure to check them out, links in the description. Huge thanks to Nicole for recommending this What If to me. I can't wait to see what Pente Patrol came up with this time, so let's jump right in.
Hello. Our story begins on Polis Massa, where Ahsoka and Rex arrived after their troublesome altercation with clones following Order 66. They were drawn to the planet due to its safeness and the fact that it could be a genuine refuge for them for the time being.
Hold on, Polis Massa is the... Isn't that the place... No. Polis Massa, isn't that the moon where Bale brought Padme and Yoda and Obi-Wan came to him as well?
When they arrived, they were surprised to see that there were familiar faces present.
Oh, yeah, it's going
Despite Ahsoka only being 17 years old, she was forced to learn about the cruel fate her master suffered on Mustafar.
Oh, man.
Was it deserved? At the moment, it felt as if it was. She learned everything, being that Yoda and Obi-Wan wanted to keep her from
he's a planet. Was Polis Massa a planet? Because I thought it was a moon, but I might be mistaken.
Falling down the dark path. This may have actually done the opposite for her, because it made her feel guilty for everything that happened to him. She had a chance to deliver a message to Anakin before everything happened. On Mandalore, Yoda asked her if she wanted him to give Skywalker a message on her behalf, and she decided against it. What a horrid mistake. Now the galaxy be forced to suffer because of it. The Jedi changed topics while Ahsoka wasted in guilt, without their knowledge of course. They spoke about what should be done in regard to the twins. The first idea was to split them up. While Rex wasn't aware of how much his best friend was suffering right now, right next to him, he was aware of how terrible of an idea this was.
Yeah, probably.
As a clone, he understood how important it was to have his brothers, and for two children without their biological parents, it would be just as important to have each other.
Yep.
As a clone, he could understand something that these Jedi could not: companionship. And the bond between siblings was more important than almost anything else in the galaxy. Rex stepped forward, still holding his helmet under his arm and telling the two Jedi Masters that he would volunteer to watch over them. Yoda and Obi-Wan looked to each other before Bale spoke up, believing that this idea wasn't in good faith. Rex turned to him and asked Bale if he knew how to survive a war. The senator was confused as Rex pointed his finger at him. If the children were as important as they believed them to be, then why give them to someone who would be in the public spotlight, or even worse, put them with Anakin's family? The Emperor wasn't stupid. He just took control of the entire galaxy out from under their noses. Those places would be the first places he searched. Even if he was led to assume that the twins and the mother were dead, then why would
Rex is cooking here. Rex is cooking.
He check there just in case? Or if he was afraid of more midichlorians multiplying or something, then he would want to stop that. Firstly, that's not how midichlorians worked, but Rex didn't know that, and he didn't need to know that. It wasn't that big of a deal. The point being that Palpatine would have no need to go there. They were like half-brother and wife to Anakin, not actually blood-related, but that didn't matter. Palpatine was still intelligent. He suggested that if the Jedi were going into exile, at least allow Rex to take care of them. Ahsoka chimed in, finally getting the strength to say something without sounding like she was about to burst into tears. Bale asked Ahsoka if she'd be joining Rex, and she shook her head. She had to forge her own path, one that wouldn't be done with Rex. He looked at her, realizing the depths of her pain, and waiting out the conversation so that he could ask her if she was alright. Their talk rounded up pretty quickly. The Jedi agreed, and Bale promised Rex and Ahsoka their own respective vessels. While Rex was going to raise the twins, he was also going to contribute to his brother's cause. He needed to save however many clones he could. This would remain a secret until everything was set up for him. Rex and Ahsoka's talk would reveal what she was upset about, and while he tried to convince her that Anakin's failure wasn't her burden to bear, she couldn't exactly move on from it. The thought of Anakin slaughtering students inside the temple was unconscionable. She needed time alone because of that. As a Jedi, her path was one that was created by her master, one that she must also walk down. Now it felt like she was only destined for destruction, the very thing her master promised her she wouldn't face. Rex was understanding. They would sneakily watch Padme's funeral before vanishing away. Yoda went to Dagobah, and Obi-Wan went to Ahch-To.
Man, I hate that. Like, Yoda, I hate the fact that he's, like, what is it called? Exiling himself. Like, man, you just stay and fight. You know, exiling yourself because you're basically just running away from the problems you helped make, you know?
These were two highly attuned planets to the Force, ones that would allow the Jedi to reconnect with their roots and wait until the time was right. They
Okay.
trusted Rex. He was a good man and an intelligent trooper. He would take good care of the twins.
Yep.
They trusted that much. The following month of Rex's life would be rather stressful. He wasn't just raising the twins, but he was learning about the Empire and the things happening to his brothers. Due to his desire to protect and save his brothers, as well as raise the twins, he used what little credits he had to buy a caregiving 3PO series protocol droid.
Okay.
It was the best way to help himself during this stressful time. Thanks to Bale, he had a large enough ship to carry himself and the twins.
Nice.
It was, in a way, a nice balance. He was a warrior during the day and a caregiver at night. Sometimes it flipped. Warrior during the night, caregiver during the day. He did consider dropping the twins off with Cut LaQuaine, but that would be unfair to
the hell
both
is
the
that?
twins and Cut and his family. Rex took on this responsibility. It was his duty to uphold his word. The clones he saved and got moving around were a little jarred by the fact that Rex was wandering around with infants, but he referred to the twins as Skywalkers. They were good kids and they were stronger than most. He believed that they would be the best of them when they reached adulthood. Due
Yep.
to the nature of things, Rex needed a home base, so he got himself situated on Taff, the site of one of his first battles. The Republic never
Yes,
captured the
Tef,
planet
from the Clone Wars movie where Asajj Ventress fought Kenobi and Anakin and all that.
because it was pretty much unpopulated, and it didn't have any strategic importance. It was here where he would, for the next year and a half or so, keep the kids and take care of them. Though when the Empire came to Teth looking for the Bad Batch, he temporarily lost the twins to the X-Series clone. Rex joined the Bad Batch as they eventually saved Omega, Luke, and Leia from Dr. Hemlock and the Imperial science machine.
Okay, good.
But the most costly mistake of this wasn't losing the twins. It was allowing Hemlock to sample their blood and plug it into the system. Before Tantus was ravaged by the Zillo Beast and detonated by Nala Se, Dr. Hemlock sent a couple vials of blood to Palpatine's
Oh,
office.
great.
Hemlock would never see the Emperor's reaction. Palpatine was informed that he was receiving a package, which he was looking forward to, and then he learned that Tantus had been rampaged through, also learning that Hemlock was turning to Swiss cheese. The Dark Lord was very disenchanted with everything revolving around the event, but there was a little silver lining. The day after Tarkin investigated the facility, his mail got to him. One might think that Imperial mail would travel quickly to the Emperor, but customs on Coruscant had to make sure it wasn't a bomb.
I see.
Palpatine was able to read everything on it. Hemlock also cross-checked the information that he had from the Jedi Temple. Because Sidious wanted his clones to be the best in the galaxy, he gave Hemlock access to the blood sampling inside the Jedi archives.
Okay.
So if there were any Jedi it matched with, it could prove that they were children of Jedi or Jedi
And it's
out
gonna
and
match
out.
with Skywalker.
And well, inside the blood, there was the DNA of Anakin Skywalker. Hemlock knew of him by reputation, but he didn't care much else aside from that. He immediately informed his Emperor of this development, which Sidious kept quiet from Vader. This only told him that
Okay.
Padme survived, she had twins, and the balance of the Force would be decided by their survival or their turn to the dark side. Sidious became frustrated. Hemlock did everything right, but this information probably should have been revealed sooner. The thing is,
Yeah.
to Hemlock, the DNA didn't matter. The midichlorian count was off the charts, which is why he sent it. Wherever these twins were, they needed to be located. Sidious cracked down immediately, calling upon his top admirals, moffs, and generals and telling them to search every child in the galaxy,
Oh, crap.
test their blood, and return with results. These children needed to be found. If anyone asked, he told them to come up with a clever response. Give them a reason to see this move as one that would benefit their children, not test them for something else. The admirals, moffs, and generals got to work immediately.
Okay.
They conducted their own studies and figured out what to use to make sure parents trusted them. It was a brilliant move, and Palpatine
So they're supposed to find 2 children in a whole galaxy. Good luck.
waited eagerly. At the same time, the Inquisitors were sent out to find these children too.
Okay.
All the while, his facilities were being picked up and relocated to other locations. He didn't have time to be wasting resources in known locations like Wayland. There were hidden Sith temples that could be used more efficiently, and Palpatine believed the perfect place for all of his future labs would be Exegol. Another good location, Jakku. The plan continued forward. He
Jakku.
just needed a new head scientist.
Yeah, isn't
to
Jakku where he actually cloned himself and stuff? I think, maybe? I don't know.
run his little game. In the meantime, Rex moved back to Babu temporarily, before gathering up Echo and taking him with some other clones to another location for the continuation of their little clone rebellion. It did feel like the Empire was an unstoppable force, and he didn't know how close he was to losing the twins to the Empire.
Oh.
Of course, everything on the surface level felt bad. But Sidious was now well aware that there were children of Anakin Skywalker,
Yep.
which only proved to him that he could elongate his life forever, whether it be using the children to continue the bloodline, or use them for essence transfer, or potential apprentices.
Okay.
It did not matter. Sidious was consumed with excitement for the future of his empire. All available resources were being directed into this project. Rex and his clones continued gathering allies, one of which finally becoming Commander Wolf and, eventually, Commander Cody. To have two longtime best friends and brothers...
Oh, let's go. Commander Cody and Commander Wolf. Two frickin' G's joining Rex. Beautiful.
was so necessary. Gregor, Hauser, and Echo were always great company too. Despite how elite their squad was, it was still a squad versus the Empire.
Yeah.
Rex was still raising the children, but as infants, there wasn't much he could do aside from take care of them. His protocol droid was a great assistance to him, and would continue to aid him going into the next 3 years of his life.
Nice.
The children were able to grow up during this time. At 5 years old, they were still like little shadows, running around his vessel and excited when he returned home. What Rex said on Polis Massa was correct, because without each other, they would have felt isolated.
Yep.
Thanks to the Bad Batch, they were able to learn that children were being tested. This was not because of the Bad Batch facing the Empire, more so the fact that Mayor Shep Hazard informed them that some of his friends in the Outer Rim faced Imperial occupation and then all their children were tested for no reason.
Oh crap.
This of course was not the end of it though. Due to the rapid expansion of the Imperial military, there was a need for a police force. The Empire focused heavily on ramping up its control over the galaxy. After the chain codes were established in the months following Order 66, there were militias, new outposts, and with the clones mostly phased out of the military by this point, there was now something more.
Okay.
While no trooper would live up to the experience and skill of a freshly groomed clone trooper, the Imperial Stormtrooper was elite. Imperial militia and army troopers were quite fine.
Except their aim is dog shit.
And then, of course, there were the Sector Authority security forces. The Empire spread out so far that they now had police for their police. Essentially, a means to make sure that
What?
cannon fodder was used before they brought in Imperial army.
Police before what?
And if they needed more cannon fodder after that cannon fodder died, Imperial stormtroopers could be brought in. Across the Outer Rim, Mid-Rim, and Core, these sector
Oh yeah, exactly. These police from fucking Andor as well. Little dicks.
security forces were established. They were identified by their blue uniforms and their constant desire to wear military-grade armor. It almost felt like they feared the people they were meant to protect. The clones in Rex's unit saw this widespread change and realized what this meant for them.
Okay.
They would have an even more difficult time. Despite the Empire kicking clones out of the Imperial military, they, for whatever reason, didn't think that was enough. So instead of just letting Clone Wars vets beg for money and die on the streets alone, they forced clones into camps or scummy cities.
Oh,
They
great.
weren't cared for, and if they were seen, they were arrested on sight. There were still the few Imperial loyal clones, but for the most part, they were all expendable. These sector security forces were meant to clean up the streets and remove these washed-up wartime heroes turned villains.
Nice.
For the clones, this meant there was nowhere safe for them, but they then realized what this did to the Empire. Their officers became pampered. They wallowed in their pride and their ego and their arrogance. The Imperial machine kept the loyalists well fed, and they prized those willing to sacrifice everything for the cause. It preyed on those with feeble minds, and it gave them something to care about and fight for. The following 5 years had the clones focus on the parenting of Luke and Leia.
Okay.
Each of these clones were skilled in something, so they taught the children different skill sets.
Now, when is Kenobi or Yoda, or whatever, coming back to actually train them? Because, that time is coming soon.
Despite staying hidden and avoiding the Empire, the twins were able to spend time with other kids. Even though they didn't spend long periods of time on Pabu, it was still good for the children to be around other kids. At age 10, they were both some of the younger kids in the city, but that was perfectly fine. They were very well versed, and they could maturely converse with their peers,
Okay.
while also enjoy their brother-sister bond. During this time, Rex, the one who took on the most responsibility over the twins, felt a great burden. He didn't want the twins to face the war he spent his entire life fighting. Luke and Leia were good kids, and he viewed them much like his own. So in his mind, he couldn't imagine them having to grow up and fight the same fight he was having now.
Yeah.
Especially because at the age of 10, they had questions. Lots of them. Rex, Cody, and Echo in specific could tell most of the stories, and sometimes, if they had a run-in with Ahsoka, she'd be able to tell them some stories too. But Rex
Okay.
had no secrets with the twins. He always told them about the lineage and what happened to their parents, referring to their mother and father as heroes of the war. Despite knowing the truth about Anakin Skywalker, Rex couldn't imagine Anakin being who he became. So for his own...
Probably you shouldn't tell him yet what he actually became, because, they're kind of 10, so...
peace of mind, he said that Anakin died following the Battle of Coruscant. He was badly injured during the battle, but died a hero. Their mother, on the other hand, was the hero who tried to stop the rise of the Empire. She did die in childbirth, and that was not Luke or Leia's fault. The twins felt longing for their biological parents, but very much like how Omega was with the Bad Batch, they found their belonging with their clone parents.
Nice.
The 6 brothers were the best family they could have ever asked for. In addition to their family being 40-year-old war vets from a 10-year-old war, they were taught their skills: mechanics, debating, shooting, sharpshooting, martial arts, recon, and an assortment of survival tactics.
Okay.
The clones knew that any one of them could end up dying.
So all of this, plus the fact that they're going to be trained as Jedi, they have the Force, they are one of the most powerful Force users. Okay.
And they needed the twins to know how to survive on their own, which both Luke and Leia were well prepared for. Neither of them had any doubt in their mind how they would survive on their own if need be. Despite seeing Ahsoka a few times and having the support of his 5 brothers consistently, as well as the other clones he helped save along the way, Rex felt incapable, as if he was failing the twins. He was taking care of them, and they felt that he was a good father figure, but he didn't feel good enough. It was something that ate him up consistently. When they were sleeping and when he wasn't on missions, he sat alone with his hands on his head, wondering if he made the best decision for them. While Rex was very transparent with the twins, they did not know what they almost ended up with. Rex couldn't help but feel like being a moisture farmer would have been awful for Luke, but maybe being a princess would have been great for Leia. She was tomboyish as it was, so it wasn't like she wouldn't be getting herself into trouble consistently, especially at age 10. Rex was fully aware that the Emperor was looking for them.
No, but Rex totally, made the best possible choice for them, most likely so.
Believed that had they been with the Organas or with the Lars, this wouldn't have ever happened. But how could he know? This was just eating himself alive. It was to this that he believed they needed to make a move. Their clone rebellion was pretty much finished. Survivors of the war that escaped the wrath of the Empire, and weren't beggars, were living pretty quiet lives from what he understood. Cutler Quain was a fantastic example of this. He was living the life.
I remember him.
No one bothered him, and he still had contact with his brothers. Rex then realized that he wouldn't feel a sense of completion until he got rid of this consistent threat for the children. He spoke to his brothers about it, and they came up with a decision, one based off the moves made by the Empire. Rex, Cody, Wolf, Echo, Gregor, and Hauser decided that the best move to make, especially against a government as overbearing as the Empire was to place themselves under its nose.
What?
They were so confident, especially on Coruscant, that they would never see it coming. Thanks to insider sources, they knew to be aware of the white uniforms. Not the stormtroopers, but the ISB. The other clones were unsure of this idea, but Rex saw what the Empire was doing. They were becoming comfortable. While they were, of course, 6 brothers raising twins, they were also fighting a war. Coruscant would be safe, temporarily. Plus, as an added benefit, if they used their contacts wisely, they could secure themselves...
Yeah, I think actually, to be honest, Coruscant is actually one of the safest places for them. To be honest, so...
a more upper-class lifestyle. The planet was huge. Surely there'd be people that would sympathize with their cause. The clones, who had been using the Outer Rim locations to hide themselves and pop Imperial locations, ran into someone before leaving. They crossed paths with a former Jedi, one who was with his young student.
Balen Skoll.
Balen Skoll had turned to his usage of the darkness since the fall of the Order, and he was instructing these lessons to his 14-year-old student. The clones didn't want trouble, and neither did Balen. He, by this point, was young enough where he didn't understand the cycle. And so before the clones and former Jedi departed, they made an alliance, and they also came up with a plan. One to use each other for the betterment of themselves and the galaxy. Balen had no intent on delusions of grandeur, but if he could aid these clones, then perhaps the Emperor could be dealt with. Because despite not understanding the cycles of the galaxy yet, Balen was most concerned with the Emperor. He was the largest threat in the galaxy to people like him and Shin.
Yeah.
It was also clear that Sidious was impatient. He wanted the twins and had been waiting for them for a little over 8 years.
Damn.
The fact that his vast empire couldn't locate them frustrated him. Balen listened to Rex's plan and
8 years is
complied with
crazy.
it. They would need Balen as it was. His core accent and the fact that he wasn't a clone would give them an extra benefit. The big thing was, the people of the core were not like those
Did
in
you
the
just say core accent? Is there accents in Star Wars? That's interesting. Interesting, okay.
mid and outer rim. On Coruscant especially, people who lived on the surface were elite. They carried all the wealth of the planet, and very, very few of them cared about people in the galaxy, aside from themselves. They were the rich and powerful for a reason.
Yeah.
Empire or Republic, it did not matter to them. All that mattered was their security. The ISB did not interact with these people, but the corporate sector security forces did. These were very similar in style to what was seen across the mid and outer rim.
I see.
They still had their blue uniforms and so forth. These people just didn't wear armor. Why would you? When you're walking around super malls in the financial district of Coruscant, all you need is credits. It was the wealthiest of the wealthiest. Nothing could stop them, and no one could touch them. Rex highlighted his plan and their drop-off location as they went to Coruscant, just reiterating anything that may have been missed prior to leaving their previous home. He wanted to make sure everything was good for them to go. Balen was cool with it. When they arrived, they landed in the lower sector, and then were transported by Alderaanian guards to the upper level and deposited into a safe house within the financial district. Echo was pretty much the biggest red flag here. His hand was the biggest giveaway that he wasn't core.
Yeah.
People in the core typically didn't flaunt themselves with mechanical barbaric upgrades. That was something for people in the outer rim. So Echo was given a glove to fit the hand, a mechanical one at that. The 10 rebels scurried into the safe house and waited. The royal guard of Bail Organa told them that there would be an individual here to talk with them soon, before the guards left.
What was it?
The group of rebels sat inside the safe house for a little while. Shin, as the eldest, was playing with Luke and Leia, who were 4 years younger than her, as Rex and Balen spoke more extensively about what they wanted to accomplish here. As they were doing this, a man dressed in almost golden attire walked in.
What the heck is that?
His face was covered in what appeared to be makeup, and his skin shined like that of a pampered upper-class individual. He regarded them kindly and thanked them for agreeing to do this. It had been difficult for the past few years. The Empire was a terrible entity, and he didn't realize there was anyone in the core who stood against it. Thankfully, he had a run-in with Senator Organa. Without that meeting, there wouldn't be
is he showing this guy? Because this is the banker guy from Andor, right?
any talk happening right here and right now. The man removed his hat from his head and raised his hand to shake theirs. He introduced himself as Sejanus Heavensbee. He was the patriarch of the Heavensbee inheritance. On Coruscant, there were families responsible for the rise of the Republic. When the formation of the system was born, it was built from wealth on Coruscant. Those families remained at the top of their power for generations, and those like the Heavensbees never lost their wealth. In the era of the High Republic, they cashed in massively.
Damn, so his family has been rich for like centuries. Damn.
One of these families supported the Empire. Of course, Sejanus never let any of his peers and friends know of his political stance, but he made it clear to these rebels that they were going to be risking his entire family's legacy on this mission. Sejanus understood that the Empire was bad for the galaxy. He understood that the less fortunate had been demolished in the rise of the Empire. He admitted that he never cared for Palpatine, but he was only a young man when Palpatine came into office the first time, and then he watched him tear down the fundamentals of the Republic. Sejanus continued, reflecting as he did, insisting that his forefathers would not stand for this. If they knew that their family gave in to an oppressive regime for their money, then they would have all been cut out of the will centuries ago. Sejanus knew what their plan was, and so he, as a way to reiterate it, made sure they were on the same page, and went through it again. They all agreed. Balen and Rex were shocked, but they knew that this was the right person to align with. This family could fund a galactic war on their own. They had
this is epic so far, man.
business empires that spanned around the core. They had casino gambits in the mid-rim, and of course there were the supply trade in the outer rim. There was very little that could
What kind of fucking monopoly does this guy have? Casinos, transportation of, like, what?
Vast empire down. Palpatine was that threat, and to go against him was their greatest risk. He told them that his wife would be assisting them. Her name was Cassia, but she wasn't here at the moment. He continued giving some location points and telling them how to hit them and what to do at each location. They were going to squeeze the Coruscant elite. Heavensbee knew that there were whispers of revolution in the lower levels. If they saw the rich and elite getting uncomfortable, it could inspire revolution. As he understood, especially from watching systems crumble during Imperial occupation, all it took was one squeeze. It was a brilliant idea. If they could leverage the poor people of the city, which made up for about 90% of the planet's population,
Damn.
they could show how weak
There's what, like 2 trillion beings on Coruscant, and 90% of them are poor? Wow.
Empire truly was. If Palpatine lost control over his empire, then he would lose control over his rule. Very quickly, they mobilized. Sejanus also told them that there'd be large balls and dinners for them to attend. Being that they were clones, they'd have to have one of their makeup artists redo their faces and hide their identity.
Okay.
Rex, Balen, and Gregor would be the leads on these missions. For the time being, he wanted them to get comfortable, revealing more to the safe house. It was a quote-unquote storage area of an antique store. It would be fully operational in a couple years.
Hold up. Are we talking about the antique store where, the guy that hired Andor? What was his name from the Andor series? Fuck's sake. What was I don't remember. He also had contacts with, Saw Gerrera and Mon Mothma and all those.
But at the moment, they were still transferring those antiques to the planet so they could start selling them. The group was completely bewildered by this move. Balen remembered his time as a Jedi when the Heavensbees would come up to the temple and spend their copious amounts of credits to upgrade something or commemorate a new addition to the archives. They were generous spenders, but this was a truest show of their actual character. They were willing to risk all the money in the galaxy to upend a dictator.
Wow.
Quietly and quickly, the rebel squad moved out. The corporate sector forces were very easy to deal with. Sure, they had their training.
I mean, yeah, considering like this dickhead from Andor, this guy was just an arrogant idiot, so.
Stormtroopers. The point being, they wanted to show the people in the Undercity that there was disorder on the surface, squeeze the elite until they got uncomfortable. It was all in service of a greater plan. Cody did question if this would just garner the Heavensbees total control over the economic market in the case of a revolution, which was a valid point. Sejanus could be lying just to gain power, but he seemed to very badly want to help. The plan made sense though, to turn the corporate sector and the lower class against each other, and then they could ascend in political presence and power. But Sejanus didn't come off as that. Luke, Leia, and Shin were not excluded from these missions. They were the perfect size to sneak into vents and move around in small spaces. Plus, because all three were children, and very mature for their ages, they were able to work together expertly.
Nice.
All their clone training worked on them, and they were the reason the clones and Balen were able to get access to the corporate security force comms channel. They listened in on everything, and it permitted them the ability to avoid sector forces and ambush them.
Okay.
As all things are with rebellion, they must start small. To build a fire, you need to harvest. That's what they were doing.
Okay,
Everything was under the nose. A couple dead corporate forces, a raid or two on a vehicle, just little things to make them uncomfortable.
Yeah, those are very, very small things, and eventually all those small things are going to build up, you know?
None of these got the attention from the ISB, which was the point. There was no reason to have the ISB all over the situation. After months of a slow burn, there was the first strike that got put on the desk of an ISB agent.
Okay.
But again, nothing came from it. They kept moving
Because
it
they
back
didn't give a shit. They're like, this is too small.
out, staying hidden, and striking when these corporate officers at least expected it. And then, during the day, randomly, a group of kids from level 124 were moving about in the shops area when they got jumped by sector forces.
The fuck?
They weren't doing anything but just looking around, and it got people's attention. Balen happened to be out and about when it happened, and he raised a cloak over his head and beat the corporate forces senseless, sending the kids away from him to get to safety.
Nice.
His Jedi martial
Good.
arts were still intact, and like a demon, he threw his fist into each of them, blocking strikes, flipping some over, breaking bones. It was a cruel show of strength, and his apprentice watched it all. But she wasn't the only person who saw it. Footage of the event made its way into the lower levels, and the corporate
Oh, now this might spark some rebellious thoughts, because now people are going to see what's happening. Like, this mysterious guy just beat the shit out of some corporate forces.
forces returned with strength. No longer did they wear their shiny uniforms. Now they needed their armor. They were uncomfortable. The people of the financial district avoided that area of town now, and the people from down below saw it. Thanks to Heavensbee, he used his connections to local news outlets and made the news more widespread in the lower levels,
Good.
as well as the financial district. In their upper-class parties, he and Balen would whisper their fears about an uprising. Rex would do the same, but he was gaining information from these people. They were getting uncomfortable. They were being squeezed and they didn't like it. because they no longer had control over themselves.
Yep.
The lower levels started showing up more, and what was on paper a class war was a show to the people of Coruscant that they didn't have to suffer under Palpatine's rule. They created an Imperial military to suppress, to bury them under stormtroopers and tanks and star destroyers. Nothing about this empire cared about them. All of a sudden, it was no longer 6 clones and a former Jedi. It was hundreds of people rising up.
Yes.
This, of course, wasn't on Palpatine's radar either.
Ugly
he
onion.
was still hunting for the twins when they were right.
Yeah, because Palpatine is being arrogant. He's like, this is maximum level arrogance.
Under his nose. The arrogance of the Empire was believing they could win
Literally what I just said. Thank you.
anything. Their belief was so fragile, just like their system. It was built on a superficial power, one that, like Palpatine, was mortal. When the people started making noise, the elite quieted. Because in the minds of the elite, if the lower levels could see that there was a unity, then they could lose their unchecked power. If the people on Coruscant could see it, then the scum of the mid and outer rim could see it.
Yep.
Rex and the clones had only just begun to understand what they started. This rise of tension was the beginning of a revolution, one that the Senate was completely ignorant to, one that even the local politics of
The Senate doesn't even have any power at this point because, Palpatine, I am the Senate.
Coruscant were too arrogant to believe. It bubbled and bubbled without anything to stop it, and then finally the corporate forces got spooked. They faced a force of protesters, ones that they had never seen before in the upper levels, and what could they do? These people weren't the Coruscant Guard. They never fought actual crime. They walked around their bougie financial district seeing nothing but pampered individuals. They never saw a hint of combat, and after all their years of training combined with their arrogant view of the galaxy, it all met in one space.
Yep.
The fire to ignite a resistance, one that wouldn't just show all of Coruscant that there was a fire burning to rip down the establishment of the Empire, but one that would show the galaxy that they were not alone. In every corner of the galaxy, the downtrodden and the oppressed were looking for a symbol to find their hope in. This was their spark, and it started with an explosion. One that had the corporate security running, and the people rising up in one united force. As this was happening, Rex and Balen were given information to pass down to the rebels. The Heavensbees were going to prove where their hearts really were. If their money was with their heart, this was going to do it. The super elite, the other families that were like the Heavensbees, that sat on thrones of coaxium for centuries, were now gathered in one place. They were typically the type to hide away, run for the hills, and never face their penance. But Heavensbee gathered them up so they could come up with a plan to counter these rebels. To, as Sejanus phrased it himself, make a case to the Emperor so that he could protect their best interests. They came to his home. They went to his palace of ivory and peace to be safe, and yet Heavensbee led them to a trap. He brought them to a place where only the rebels could find them, and it was at this point
Oh, shit.
where the unstoppable became stoppable. It was here where they realized how superficial their power was, and how little it meant to the people of the galaxy. They were gathered up by people who had nothing more than the clothes on their back, and they demanded a response. The Emperor wasn't one to react to hostage situations or thugs like this. But when his biggest spenders in the galaxy were caught and the entirety of the Empire was stuck in a position where he had to notice, he noticed. Aside from the vast business empire the Heavensbees had, each of these families had power unlike anyone else in the galaxy, and now they were all captured. They had businesses across the core, mid-rim, and outer rim, and if they were taken from power, it would grind the entire empire to a halt. Palpatine tried to react quickly, but the resistance only proved that they weren't going to stand for it. And thanks to Cassia Heavensbee, she was able to put the eyes of the galaxy onto Coruscant. Everyone now saw the fragility of the system that claimed to have such great power. The population of Coruscant, one of over 2 trillion, mounted up. People rose up because there was a spark.
2 trillion is crazy, and you ain't doing shit against 2 trillion with, even the whole Imperial military, to be honest.
And all the while, as Palpatine sent his murderous inquisitors to kill these rebels, he realized the cost of a strong military. He understood that under all of its power, all of its strength, all of its credit spent towards it, it meant nothing without purpose. Subjugation was not purpose and neither was oppression. While the Inquisitors moved in on the super rich and tried to stop the rebels, there was another attack. The hostage situation got people's attention, and Balen told Rex that they needed a diversion, so they lit a fire in the Senator's district, and of course, killed a couple stormtroopers for show. Not everyone had weapons, but with a raid shortly following on the corporate sector building,
I mean, they can
many
just pick up random stuff and, fight.
people were able to gain access to weapons and start their revolution.
Oh, shit.
The Inquisitors were redirected from their initial strike to stop the riots in the streets, and Balen told the clones to go. He would hold it off from here. Balen would fight 5th brother, Merrick, and 8th brother. Their fight was remarkable, but the fact that these faceless forces of the
Balen's
Empire were
beating them.
facing trouble
Balen's
only
beating
riled
them.
the people up more. It was no longer a fight between the people and the elite. It was the people versus the Empire. Balen was outmatched, but he used his lightsaber skills to shove these oppressive Inquisitors back.
Okay.
Due to Grand Inquisitor not being on planet, he could work through them quickly. He moved slowly and methodically, but he made the Inquisitors pay for their attacks. As he fought them off, stormtroopers came to fight, and while Balen initially looked dead in the water, fighting off 3 opponents as these reinforcements came, the Resistance fighters joined him.
Yes!
And a duel turned into a riot, and that
Go.
riot turned into a battle. One thanks to Cassia Heavensbee, the one who captured the event, one for everyone to see, and the Empire was caught flat-footed. As the riots and battle were taking place,
Let's go.
Rex made an executive decision to move Luke, Leia, and Shin from the city. He and Balen agreed on the decision before there was a battle in the city streets. The kids had done their work. Without them, it would have been much harder to get the spark lit, but they did it. Now they shouldn't have to fight a day in their lives. In the middle of the battlefield, Balen kicked 8th brother
Assuming this was like a Star Wars episode, those kids would probably be like, yeah, we want to fight, and they would fight. But,
Shin in, as he
Makes
thrusted
sense.
his blade forward, killing them on impact.
Let's go.
He turned back, raising his blade to his side before parrying and striking heavily against Merrick. He spun the Inquisitor around and allowed 5th brother to strike him down into dust. Merrick vanished as Balen pushed forward. Around them there was a war. The people were getting shot down, but there were more of them. There was hope to fight for. For months they'd been watching the corporate sector get abused, and now they were finally ready for a war. Balen could hear clones, turning to see clones from a local resistance detachment of the Coruscant Guard, running in with the citizens. He grinned as he turned back and his face stiffened, blocking a strike from 5th brother before shoving him backwards. The Inquisitor was weak. He stumbled over his wounded leg before Balen gutted him. Some of
yeah,
the
I mean, for example, the 5th Inquisitor, I know, it's basically just a washed up Jedi Knight,
citizens grabbed the lightsabers and rushed into combat. Who knows what happened to them? Lightsabers were expensive
Some citizens just straight up grab those lightsabers. Damn.
on the black market, but they could have accidentally cut themselves down in the heat of battle. Who knows? Balen returned to the safe house, seeing that Shin, Luke, and Leia were gone, and he was glad. They'd be safe in the hands of Bail and Brea Organa on Alderaan.
Okay.
As the comfort of Coruscant slowly transformed into a battlefield, those around the galaxy saw blood in the water.
Where's Yoda and
moved in.
Obi-Wan?
While Rex wasn't
And
with the
Ahsoka.
twins, he couldn't help but feel vindicated for his past feelings. It was at this moment where he realized he did not fail them. He was saving them,
Yep.
and if it weren't for them, he wasn't sure if he'd be inspired enough to take the fight to the Empire at this age. He and his clones stayed on Coruscant. Every couple weeks, one of them would go to Alderaan to be with the twins. It was a good little situation for them. Palpatine, on the other hand, was pulling more resources to the city planet. Due to its massive population, he was up against the wall.
Oh,
The
yeah.
civil war of Coruscant divided the cities. While the Heavensbees would be saved due to their contribution to the Resistance, their kind did not share the same fate. The Empire caved in, and without the elite controlling their monopolies, the problem very quickly became a galactic one. While Palpatine was still at the helm, the Senate vanished overnight, whether it be senators running to their home worlds or getting captured.
Damn.
Palpatine barricaded his throne room and understood one thing. If he ran from Coruscant, he would lose his empire.
Yep.
He needed to win this battle. The Inquisitors were pretty much already dead,
Well, you're
and
not
the remaining
winning.
ones were being brought back to the city planet to fend off these foolish protesters. What only made matters worse was what the rebels were able to do. With a couple individuals like Clone War vets leading the charge, they were able to secure important outposts. For example, because Rex and Cody knew the Empire would try and bombard the city, they had detachments of rebels take control over turbo laser cannons and
Damn.
the hypervelocity gun. So if the Empire brought their biggest cruiser near the people, they'd blow it out of the sky, which they did.
Damn.
One Star Destroyer was shot down and it crashed through the Senate building.
That's
the war for
epic.
Coruscant wasn't a couple weeks long. It went on for the longer part of an entire year.
Wow.
And the battles got even
It's
worse.
guerrilla fighting,
Rebels
basically.
also captured Imperial military attack, so they were fighting fire with fire, and the locals of Coruscant simply had more numbers than the entire Imperial military.
Oh, yeah.
There was hope.
2
and
trillion.
the spark was a fire that burned bright. They didn't give up, because no one can stop a rebellion that fueled like this. The galaxy was riding on their shoulders, and with the Empire pulling resources to stop the rebellion on Coruscant, there were rises of riots and battles across the galaxy, not just in the mid-rim and the outer rim, but in the core itself. The people were inspired. They saw what they could do, and the people of Coruscant, always known for being the richest of the rich, showed that they were more than that. That they were more than where they were born. They fought with everything they had, and they rallied support from across the galaxy. It was no longer just the Coruscant resistance, but a galaxy-wide rise-up of power. One that would completely tear down the establishment of the Empire.
Palpatine,
As the year-long civil war on Coruscant went by, Palpatine was growing wary. He'd been planning for his move to Exegol, in hopes that he could survive and continue his empire by coming back with new tech. Tech that hadn't been discovered yet, but everything was being pushed forward too fast. As the rebels mounted up their final strike at the Empire, Palpatine prepared to use his dark power to kill as many as he could. He lost Vader at some point, he actually didn't know when. It was a
Yeah, where is it? Where the fuck is Vader? I actually didn't think, like, I haven't heard Vader in this story in a while.
Large-scale battle, a consistent siege, and as Vader was using the Force and cutting down people, he was smashed with a shell, and he survived that, but his armor was shredded, and he had to fend off more people than he could count.
Damn.
He was the Emperor's vessel of evil, and he paid the price for fighting against freedom fighters in the galaxy. As Palpatine prepared to use
Vader is fucked. Palpatine, why are you just not running to Exegol? Because if your cloning fails, now you're fucked.
dark powers in what would become the final battle of the Coruscant Civil War, an Imperial Star Destroyer was crippled from the inside. Balen, Rex, Gregor, Hauser, Echo, and Cody made a move on the ship, hoping to destroy the Jedi Temple and kill Palpatine in the process.
Okay.
Yes, Wolf was fine, he was babysitting on Alderaan. The clones had a skirmish with Imperial troopers. This vessel was filled to the brim with shock troopers, death troopers, and purge troopers. It was a grueling undercover mission.
Oh yeah, these are purge troopers. Those are like even more elite than death troopers.
After all, it was Tarkin's flagship, the one stationed to protect Palpatine from the air. Thrawn got earlier in the year, not by anything he couldn't plan for, but an assassin paid off by the rebels slit his throat in his sleep.
Damn.
Inside the reactor room of the Star Destroyer, the clones fought off Imperial grunts one by one, until a rocket trooper dropped a missile into the chambers, blowing up the control panel and launching Cody and Rex away from each other. They survived the blast, but the destruction of the control panel would stop them from detonating the machine. There would be one way to detonate it, and that was manually. Due to the fact that they were on a covert mission, there was no way for them to sneak enough bombs into the ship and cripple it enough to slam into the temple. Cody ran over to Rex and grabbed his wrist, telling him to carry on the fight to win this war. This one was for the men of the 212. Cody leapt down as Gregor and Hauser tried to stop him, but he told them to run. Cody picked up two blasters and diverted their attention. Echo and Balen got to Rex to help him up, as Cody killed off death troopers on his move to the manual switch. One of the blasters malfunctioned and he pulled out a vibroblade, striking down a death trooper and getting into a brawl with another, one that resulted in him getting thrown like a ragdoll. Rex tried to stop his brothers and Balen, but as they turned back, they could see Cody, now without his helmet, blasting the death trooper and run to the control panel, mouthing to himself for the Republic, before detonating the device.
For the Republic!
They were able to get to an escape pod as Tarkin watched his Star Destroyer rip through the temple, killing Palpatine in the middle of a ritual. He couldn't even prepare for it.
Wow.
Like his master, he was killed in a moment of weakness. Rex was in tears by the time they entered the escape pod.
Honestly,
But
is Palpatine stupid or something? Is he that arrogant? Why the fuck is he still on Coruscant? Like, what?
He did it. He was the final nail in the coffin for 2 decades worth of pain and suffering. This was 13 years of the clones preparing for war and dying in it, and 11 more years of a galactic empire that was now on its knees. For Tup, Fives, Waxer, Boyle, Cut Up, Nub, Droidbait, Matchstick, and for Heavy, Jesse, Hardcase, Flash,
So many clones.
Red Eye, Pons, Colt, Axe, Vong, Jack, Mix, Tech, and all of their brothers lost to the Clone Wars and the Scourge of the Empire.
So many clones.
He did it for them. All their brothers could sleep peacefully now, knowing that Palpatine, the architect of not just their creation, but their demise, was finally gone, and his evil regime, built off the backs of the clone army, would crumble into obscurity. The nightmares were over. They had done their duty. In the weeks following the victory of Coruscant, the galaxy would see more fighting. The war had only just begun. Thanks to the capture and even death of many of the social elites, their monopolies were left to dry up and dissipate. Sejanus stopped all of his businesses in support of the rebellion, but he made sure all the workers that worked for him and his companies were paid off.
That's
now
very nice.
It was time for the Empire to crumble. Rex and his boys would go back to Alderaan so that they could find their peace. Their war was pretty much over. Echo, Gregor, and Hauser would return to other battlefields across the galaxy, but Wolf and Rex would stay with the twins, taking care of them and raising them. Balen initially went back to Alderaan so that Shin could follow him, but he could see now that she was happy. He wouldn't follow the ways of the Jedi of old.
Where's
He would
Kenobi
let
and
her
Yoda?
find her own happiness, promising her that he was always just a call away. The Empire fell 4 months after Cody's sacrifice. The war wasn't long-lived, but Coruscant was the beating heart of the galaxy. Without that heart, the body cannot live, and without Coruscant and its centralized power, there was no Empire. Sure, there were moffs and soldiers, but there was no work. All the work was gone, and the people needed to eat. Realizing that the moffs and soldiers had been eating everything only made them hungrier, and the fight for the galaxy harder. It was a united force across the galaxy to end the Empire. Rex and the twins would watch peacefully from Alderaan as he told them more stories about their parents and even that of Commander Cody. The difficult thing for the twins was that, while they grew up into a positively changing galaxy, they watched multiple of their fathers age rapidly. By the time they were in their 20s, Rex and the boys were old men. It didn't take the fight out of either the twins or the old men, but it was just a constant reminder to Luke and Leia of how short life was, and how they shouldn't take any moment for granted, because you never know when it might sneak up on you. It wouldn't be until they reached their 30s that they would start losing their parents. Before any of the heartbreak, the clones, the victors of their lifelong war, were able to see their twins grow up happily. Luke and Leia both took to politics, just like their mother. And while on the surface their passions mirrored those of Padme, their passion meshed well with how forthright and fearless they were, which were qualities belonging to that of their father. They both would use their ability to use the Force in the daily, thanks to lessons from Balen and Shin. The trio maintained a healthy relationship over the years, but none of them would ever join the Jedi Order. Obi-Wan found his purpose in the years after the fall of the Empire,
rebuild the Jedi
and it
Order.
would be he who rebuilt the Jedi on Act 2.
Nice.
The twins would also keep a close relationship with Ahsoka over the years, as she also found her inner peace. As for the clones, and especially Rex, he couldn't imagine a better fate than the one he had before him at the end of his life. A galaxy that the sun shone on. A people not afraid of their government or its military. And a set of twins that, in his mind, deserved the galaxy they now had. And that, my friends, is the story. Again, special thanks to our patrons, Benjamin Wells.
Wow. 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 10 out of 10. Man, the writing on this is absolutely magnificent. Beautiful. I love this what if. It's a great what if. Man, I don't have enough words to describe how good this is. And Pente Patrol, I feel like by every time I react to this what if, it's getting better and better, and the writing is just getting more and more impressive, and I can't believe that this guy can make better Star Wars stories than what we get these days. It's honestly kind of sad, but wow, 10 out of 10 for the story, man. Beautiful, all the damn way. I love how he includes people that, you wouldn't expect to be, like Balen Skull and Shin Hati. You don't see that much of Kenobi and Yoda and Ahsoka, which you would expect to see, but you don't. I love the way how the clones raised Luke and Leia. Kenobi gets to rebuild the Jedi Order, and this is just a great what if all the damn way. 10 out of 10. Let me know what you guys would rate this what if in the comment section down below, and if you agree with my rating, let me know in the comment section what you would rate this what if out of 10, and if you agree with my 10 out of 10 rating, or if you don't. And that's it.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this reaction, make sure to go subscribe to Pente Patrol for more awesome what if content. And do not forget to subscribe to my channel, leave a like, and turn on those notifications so you never miss an upload. Remember, a new Star Wars what if reaction comes out every single day. Join our Discord, the link's in the description. Also, if you want to support our channel and get exclusive perks, consider joining our Patreon. Huge thanks to all our amazing patrons for your support. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this video, so drop a comment with your feedback or let me know which Star Wars what if I should react to next. Thanks again for watching. This is the way, and the Force be with you. Until then, I will see you next time.
Hey, you didn't watch it? Well, check out the video on the left side of the screen, which is specifically recommended for you, or check out the playlist on the right of the screen, which contains similar videos to this one, made by me, of course. Hey, remember, subscribe.